Good morning and welcome to Wednesday DEVO for July 22, 2020. I'd like to share with you a couple of scriptures this morning. It seems that we do a lot of talk about love, but we don't talk a lot about kindness. And so I want to talk to you this morning about kindness. And there's two verses. First of all is the words of Jesus from Luke 6:35 that says, "Love your enemies, do good to them, and lend them without expecting to get anything back." The second one is 1 Thessalonians 5:15 that says this, "Always try to be kind to each other and to everyone else." So you probably know that in baseball, an umpire decides which pitches are balls and strikes and who's safe and who's out and what's a foul ball and what's a fair ball. And in football, there are several different officials. You have your referees and your line judges and so forth. But what about the other sports? For example, who decides what ball is inbounds or out of bounds in tennis? Who's in charge during a boxing match to decide whether a punch is legal or not? Take a look at this list that I've compiled. And do you know which sport goes with which type of official? Take a minute to look at that. Finished trying to figure it out? Okay, let's see how you did. In soccer, the referee, aided by linesmen, make the call and keep the game fair. In diving, a panel of judges rates each diver's performance. A tough judge is one of the officials, and a touch judge is one of the officials in a rugby match. In horse racing, a steward decides whether a horse is to be disqualified or not. In tennis, it is a line judge that rules whether the ball is in or out. In fencing, it's a chief official. He watches carefully to make sure everyone plays by the rules. And in cricket, it is an umpire that's in charge of the game. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? All those different sports have a person or persons who decide what's fair or foul, what's in or out, what's good and what's bad. The athletes themselves do not make decisions. A referee or a judge or an umpire, a line judge, an official, a steward does that for them. It's the same in life. We're not the ones who decide whether something is true or not. Take kindness, for example. You may say, hey, kindness is evil. Kindness is bad. I don't have to be kind. But that doesn't change the fact that kindness is right. Why? Because we don't decide such things. God does. And He makes it pretty clear that kindness, even kindness towards our enemies, is good. So let's reflect upon that as we think in terms of what is right, what is wrong, what is kind, and what is not kind. Our verses again are Luke 35 really, that says, "Love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back." And 1 Thessalonians 5:15, "Always try to be kind to each other and to everyone else." Let me leave you with this story. The story is told of a man named Martin who lived many centuries ago. He was born in an area that is now known as Hungary. And when he was 15 years old, his father, who was an officer in the Roman army, insisted that Martin become a soldier in the Roman army. 5 or 6 years later, Martin was riding through the streets of Amiens, France, with a small band of fellow soldiers, their swords and their armor glistening in the sunlight. Men and women pressed against the walls of the narrow street to watch this thrilling display of horses and soldiers riding by. They were dressed, these people on the sides were dressed in flimsy rags, shivering in the cold. And at that moment, Martin saw a ragged man, and he pulled the reins up on his horse, and he stopped. He watched the poor man for a few moments, then looked around uncertainty. Although Martin had no money with him at the time, he felt an urge to do something to help this beggar. So in a flash, Martin reached his hand to his shoulder and gripped the heavy cloak that hung around his armor. He took it off and then drew his sword. The beggar opened his eyes wide in fear, thinking that Martin was going to hurt him, but he never threatened the beggar with his weapon. Instead, gripping the cloak of one hand, his cloak in one hand and his sword in the other, he sliced through the heavy fabric, cutting it into two pieces. He leaned over and draped one of the pieces around the beggar's trembling shoulders. Then he returned his sword to its place, lifted the other piece of cloak to his own shoulders, and galloped off with his companions. Cool story, right? For 16 centuries, people have admired Martin's act of kindness to this beggar because people recognize that kindness, even a small act of kindness, is good and admirable. In fact, this incident, although it was 16 centuries ago, is one of the reasons Martin was honored as a saint after his death in AD 397. Actually, there is no such thing as a small act of kindness. As Martin found out later that night, the night that he showed kindness to this beggar, he had a dream in which he saw Jesus surrounded by angels, and in the dream, Jesus wore one half of a Roman soldier's cloak. Think about it. Even a small act of kindness is significant and might make the difference in someone's life. So let's have joy. Let's smile. Let's be kind, because it says in the Word to always try to be kind to each other and to everyone else. Have a great day.